Morning,
Mark.
morning, Sam. You right? Right.
Very good. Thank you very much. Cheers for joining us this morning. Let's start with Erik Ten Hag. He's been pursuing Mason Mount for a while now. What are your thoughts on the price point, seeing that there's very little time left on his contract?
Yeah, I think the bid that Man United have put in is probably a little bit over, but I suppose you pay the English tax. If Erik Ten Hag wants Mason Mount, I think that you have to try and sign it. Mason Mount. My major concern with it is that this summer for Manchester United is meant to be about efficiency, speed, and quantity and quality. And we've only got a few days left of June, and then we're into July. Nobody's gone out the door. Nobody's come in the door, and I think this is where Manchester United need a really good director of football, because if Erik Ten Hag says to me, I want Mason Mount, I want Harry Kane, if I know this league as a director of football, I say, well, that's all well and good, but I'm probably not going to get you those players before the season starts, and I'm going to pay a lot of the budget on them. I mean, Chelsea want Manchester United's place in the top four. Why would they be in a rush to give us a fair deal so that Mason Mount can come in, go on pre-season and be ready for next season and potentially push Chelsea out of the top four? It's just, I get why Erik Ten Hag wants him, and I like Mason Mount, but there's a bit of naivety about what we're doing. I think Harry Kane was the target. Everyone said that'd be difficult. It looks like we've pulled out of that. So I think United are just desperate for some competence from the top of the club that then supports the manager, I think.
Mark, having been a manager myself, I've sat on my sunbed on holidays, and it's just you're more busy in the summer than you are, and all you'll be trying to do now, Ten Hag, is he'll be negotiating contracts like Martial's, for example. He hasn't done very well. He's on massive wages. There's clubs that are prepared to take him, but they won't pay him the wages. And then it's how big the cheque you've got to write Martial for him to leave. Because once you show your hand that you're prepared to let these players leave the club, you can't have them back in your dressing room because they know you want to get rid of them. So I think that's the difficult bit, getting rid of players who haven't done very well.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dean. And I think that, again, I mean, I sound like a broken record, and I think most Man United fans do around the ownership. But if you think about Harry Maguire as well, £200,000 a week, I think there's teams that would love Harry Maguire, but they won't pay that. So you've got to have the ability to say, all right, we'll take 35 million from West Ham for Harry Maguire, but we'll pay him 10 million on the way out to cover the wages that West Ham can't afford. But to do that, you've got to have an ownership that will do that, like the Barcelonas of this world. And we've got the Glazers who see every player as an asset listed against the debt. So it's really difficult for United, because you're right, the outs are as important as the ins, because that will, supplement the budget for Ten Hag. And at the moment, he must be on holiday. Well, I mean, he's not got any hair anyway, has he? But he'd be pulling his hair out. It'd be the same as the fans. It's a weird summer transfer window at the moment for Manchester United.
If Manchester United can't get the money that they want and they've decided for Harry Maguire, do you think he'll end up staying at the club? And is there any way that he can be reintegrated into the squad? Erik Ten Hag has chosen not to use him a lot this season, although when he has started in the Premier League, I think his last 6 Premier League starts, all been in victories, only 1 goal conceded during that period: West Ham, Bournemouth, Leeds, Everton, Forest, and against Fulham on the final day of the campaign. Is there any way of reintegrating him into the team, into the squad, as a squad player going forward if they can't get the money that they want for him?
I think if they do, it's almost a sign of regression and defeat on the progress you want to make, because it's very clear to everybody that Harry Maguire is not part of Ten Hag's plans. If he becomes part of the plans, then you're conceding that you're not ambitious as a football club and you can't move forward. If you want to look, Man City are going to move Laporte and bring in Vardiel, and they've already got Akanji, Aki, Stones, and Diaz. I mean, that's what you're up against. Arsenal probably going to bring Jurien Timber in. If you're keeping Harry Maguire, it sends a very big message out that we're not progressing and we're having to make do with players that aren't good enough. So United somehow need to find this ability to, be ruthless and say, look, we are removing you. You're not good enough. We've got standards, because we'll never hit those standards if we have to keep using players that clearly aren't hitting the standards.
Do you know what, Mark? Sitting on the plane to pre-season games where he's going to be going, as a manager, you don't want these players on the plane with you. You've got a different atmosphere growing at the club. You want everybody rowing in the same direction as you. If you've got some players on that plane who row in the opposite way, it just sets you back 6 months.
Yeah, and also I heard Sam mention Jadon Sancho as well. I mean, that's a difficult player to get rid of. If you can't move Fred, Harry Maguire, Anthony Martial, Scott McTominay, Dean Henderson on, which are quite, there's interest in those players. If you can't move those on, what chance have you got of moving a player like on Jadon Sancho on, which is a very brave decision by Ten Hag to get rid of. But again, that's the sort of ruthlessness you need, where people go, well, he's got rid of Sancho. But then again, he didn't buy Sancho. That's a Solskjaer signing. So he's got every right to say, look, Jadon, you're just not my type of player. I've got some young lads coming in like Garnacho, and I want to build my team. I mean, I think Ten Hag must be sat there going, I can't move the players I need to, and I've got other players I'd like to get rid of. He needs proper support from a recruitment team that can give him what he wants.
Well, it's interesting because it's only the end of June, isn't it? There still is a lot of time to go before the start of the season. When you're a manager, do you have a deadline? Or do you accept now that this stuff does sometimes go right the way to the end of the window, which means, August, end of August, beginning of September, that's when the deadline is. I mean, ultimately, you've got to, as an executive, trying to balance the books. And Manchester United, at this moment in time, we don't even know who the owner's going to be by the time we get to that point. So they're working in slightly different parameters than maybe they hope they'd be working in at this stage as well.
Well, normally, the owner's saying to you, listen, you need to get rid of some of these before we get any more in, because they've been businessmen. They've made all their money from business, which I know what the wage bill is. I know how much the materials cost me. That's how much I'm going to make next year. Well, when you buy somebody like Jadon Sancho for 80 million, and like how long later, not long later, you're thinking, what's happened there? He's now worth 40 million. We've lost 40 million on one player and his wages, and he's not produced anything. So they can't get their head round it. So normally your owner will say to you, you need to get some of these out before I give you any money.
Just a quick one on David De Gea before we let you go, Mark. Talks of new contract negotiations for him. I mean, it's so difficult, isn't it, for Erik Ten Hag, because he's in a situation where in an ideal world he'd be going, right, okay, I'll change my goalkeeper, I'll get a new centre-half, I'll buy Mason Mount, I'll get Harry Kane. But all those things probably aren't going to happen this summer.
Yeah, I think with De Gea, it's really weird. And my first stance on this is, and I know there's a lot of fans who would like to see De Gea go for good reasons, footballing reasons. But I just think this is a guy that I really like. He's been at the club for, 12 years. And I think it's disgusting that Manchester United are letting him go to the last few days of his contract and just leaving it hanging there. I think the way we treat some players is bang out of order. But I think what's happened here is that Erik Ten Hag has a budget and he knows what he wants from that budget. And now he's not getting those players from that budget. I think he's having to, almost on the hop, move his budget and go, well, maybe I will go for a goalkeeper for 50 million then now, because I'm not going to get Harry Kane. I'm going to get a cheaper striker. So I suppose it's a result of a chaotic transfer window for Manchester United so far, that, you've got your goalkeeper there with 5 days to go and he doesn't know whether he's staying or not. And we don't know what striker we're signing, and Chelsea are holding us to ransom. I'm sure it'll all sort itself out in the end, but really you want these players on pre-season, because we know what happened at the start of last year, signing players late. We lost to Brentford and Brighton.
July the 12th, first game for Manchester United in Oslo. Thank you very much to Mark Goldbridge
Thanks, Mark,
joining us this morning. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mark, who's on the network over the course of the weekend usually, and I'm sure he'll be popping up all over the programme roster as well to give us his views on Manchester United over the course of the summer.
talkSPORT Breakfast, waking you up Monday to Friday morning from 6 a.m. on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.